Katie Cole, and this is going to be the first part of the Making of the Song series about my song Time on My Hands. And it's just a little bit of an insight into what goes into actually the production of a song, all the stuff you don't actually get to hear about. You just get the song, but there's so much more that goes into it before it gets to your ears. So a rare appearance by my producer Howard Wheeling. I just wanted to get share a bit of his story with you so you get to know a little bit more about him. But this is a bear. Thank you for agreeing to do this with me. This is like having Bigfoot on camera. I can't explain this any better than that. But before we sort of dive right into the recording of the song, I want to talk about you for a little bit. And I know it's kind of your least favorite subject, but I wanted to share some of your career with the audience because they may not know about some of your backstory, but I know you got into music production so early in your career, and I don't know, I just wondered if you're always gearing towards a career in music, or was there something specific that made you sort of pivot to recording and the studio life? Was there anything specific?
Yes.
One word answers. This is perfect.
No, yes, I wasn't good enough at performance.
So what was your performance history?
Just playing horn and cello and all the useless instruments in rock and roll.
Was that something you actually wanted to do? Did you want to pursue playing it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ah, cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Didn't know. Interesting. So who were some of these sort of early artists that that you sort of were lucky to work with? Like I know there's the obvious ones, like I know people know your background with Smashing Pumpkins and things like that, but like before we started, like I spotted your name on like a really diverse list of bands and people that you'd work with, and I don't know, I always wondered, because it was so eclectic, like what was sort of a few artists that were influential to you that impacted your career sort of growing up that led you into this career?
That's an enormous question.
I know it is.
Because you have to start with bands like the Beatles.
Yeah.
You have to go to Queen. You have to talk about Stevie. You have to talk about Marvin. You have to talk about Aretha. You have to talk about Joy Division, Cheap Trick. I mean, there's so much stuff.
Yeah.
There's.
To be honest, like you were, you were one of the first people that sort of made me realize that some people say like they love music and they really mean I love music within this one genre, whether it's country or rock or rap or whatever. And like myself, and you definitely have a much more diverse array of artists that you sort of have sort of influenced you, obviously, but you sort of made me realize that you can be a music lover and love one thing, but you can also be a music lover and really just appreciate it on a really broad spectrum. And I think that's what I found out about you, and as I got to work with you more, that's something that became really apparent, because when you're referencing a song, or you're referencing the artist, and then knowing that they're also referencing that person, and then referencing that person too.
That's something we talk a lot about, and a lot of
the
artists that I like to work with talk about a lot. It's always the etymology of how things and how it came to fruition.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't really know that if you're referencing the Beatles, you're also referencing really early rock and roll. If you're referencing Bowie, you're referencing everybody that Bowie listened to, which is pretty broad. So I don't know. I think it's interesting to know that, because when you love something, like just because you love, maybe it's psychedelic rock or the Beatles or 60s rock and roll, like you can apply loving that into modern music production. And it won't sound dated. If something's great, it will always be great. It's how you use it, and you taught me that, like amongst everything else. So you cut your teeth in the studios in your 20s, pretty much, as a recording engineer. When did it shift into becoming sort of a producer and a mixer and all those sort of things? Was it somebody like an artist that you just had to produce or develop, or was it a natural progression or something you fell into?
No, it's just it seems to me that a lot of people just naturally fall into it. I was lucky enough to work at a time when you could kind of have singular paths. You didn't have to just be an engineer. I mean, yeah, you know, you could just be you could just be an engineer, or you could try to be just a mixer or anything like that. But you know, I got to do it all.
Yeah. Very, very lucky.
At the time. Yeah, very lucky.
Yeah. And
Very
it's,
lucky.
you came up in a time where, like, you've told me stories of working with, and you still do to this day occasionally, working with, you know, reel to reel, and just, it's a totally different ballpark. Not everything is inside the box, and just actually having that hands-on experience and knowing when to use what technology or when to use what method recording this band versus that band. Like, that's something that
Right.
you've...
Well, it's not so much a when as much as it's a why. A lot of times.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And then does it relate to the genre or just the band
It
itself?
can relate to the genre. It can relate to what's the intent.
Ah, gotcha.
You know.
Cool. No, it's interesting to me because these are things that...
Well, it's different. I mean, it's hard for people these days because you know you have access to all this technology and 60 plugins and
Yeah.
25 Fairchilds and all of that, and but why?
Yeah.
Why when one will work, or
Yeah.
you know, and then why are you doing those things?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people just do it off of it's autopilot.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
Well, I mean, I noticed one thing that I've heard you repeat to me and to other artists, like, you can do all that stuff, but if the song isn't there, what's the point? Or if the performance isn't right, that's another
There's
what's
no
the point?
Yeah.
You can't fix that. Like, you may as well just go and go and go. And I don't know. I've been lucky enough to be on a fly on the wall. You've let me sort of be in the room when you've been recording other artists a couple of times, and there seems to be like this universal language that you speak with musicians to get them to do a certain thing or a certain take or a certain goal. How do you know how to direct musicians in that way? And does the language change from working with studio musicians versus independent artists?
So first part of your question, languaging is just, it's kind of like a feel thing. You, you know, some days, you know, maybe the guitar player comes in and he had a bit too much to drink the night before, and,
Yeah.
you know, maybe the drummer had a fight with his girlfriend, or,
Yeah.
you know, maybe the background singer just, she's not feeling it today,
Yeah.
whatever the thing is. So you've got to navigate not only the daily psychology, but like the whole, the session psychology. And again, it's all about the intent of like where you're trying to end up and the feeling you're trying to evoke.
Yeah. So I know from first-hand experience, working in the studio, you're dealing with your songs that are super personal to you, that may be about really difficult subjects or a heartbreak or a loss or things like that. How do you sort of navigate working with artists and being sort of, I suppose, gentle to their needs, but also getting what you want out of, you know, a performance or the recording or maybe even the song?
Again, that's a big question. So,
All
I mean,
the big
it's
questions.
yeah, it's not something to answer like in a
Yeah.
minute, but wow.
Well, it's probably different as well from artist to artist, because some artists may be easygoing. Like, I consider myself to be pretty easygoing, yet I've still had total meltdowns in the studio too, where I've felt like I'm being questioned, but then I look over it and I
Sure.
think
And
you're doing the right thing.
I think part of the thing is it depends on where you are in the actual song process, because a lot of times people will come in with songs that aren't quite finished songs,
Yeah.
and they're expecting the musicians to fill it out. Whereas, you know, a lot of the work we've done, especially on this last record, was we spent a year
Yeah.
or somewhere in there just really honing the songs and
Yeah.
hammering them down, and that's why we could get the session musicians sort of in and out to do what they needed to do, as opposed to, well, let's try this, let's try that, because we already went through those
Yeah.
iterations.
and I've got literally I've still got the lyric sheets that go version 5 where I've rewritten it again. Like I kept I kept track of every little thing, every reference we were
And
making.
my comments are, I don't like it. And that's basically my comment.
I flag a line. I'm like, why don't you like that line? I just don't like it. I'm like, okay. But the thing is, I've learned as a songwriter, like when I'm working with someone like Howard, that sometimes you don't like it because a word may sound funny or it triggers funny, or sometimes it's just something for me as a songwriter to go back and go, can I top that? And I've learned to not take it personally, even though I still do, because, it's still my babies, to go back, see if I can better it, and even if it's just that 2 to 5% better because of that one word change or whatever it is, the question is it worth it? And it kind of is. And I respect that so much about you, that you'll pull me up on the songwriting before we even get in with the musicians, because of course you can let incredible musicians do incredible things and it will sound incredible, but at the end of the day, like the last batch of songs that we recorded together, I can listen back through them and go, I don't have any regrets here. Like none.
Right.
There's no songwriting thing where I'm like,
as an artist, that, unless you're Paul McCartney, things aren't sacrosanct. So.
Yeah, totally get that. I learned that from you, to not take it personally, even if it is personal. Give it a shot, because you just don't know what's going to come.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing in the studio. Is like, it's at least try it.
Yeah. Because you can always go back to what you had or revert back to version 1, version 2. It doesn't. If you keep track of everything, keep lyrics, keep recordings, there's nothing lost. What's the harm? Like a bit of pride, bit of ego, whatever. That's that's.
Yeah.
Yeah. You are probably at your most vulnerable when you're in the studio too, and a lot of people sort of don't take that into account. But yes, I've cried in the studio. Don't worry about that.
It's very difficult because they are babies.
Yeah. But
and a lot of times it's hard. The growing pains are hard sometimes, because the ones that you think, and the ones that you think are like the slam dunks are the ones that get tabled and basically don't come out great, and then the ones that you're like, I wrote this in an afternoon, or whatever, and it becomes like the song that everybody's like loses their mind.
Well, I felt that way about when we recorded on Lay It All Down. We started a fire. Like that was one of the few that usually, like, we've come into a progression of sort of walking into the studio having some sort of plan, some sort of map, some sort of demo, some sort of guides and references for songs. But that was one of the songs that you had the smarts to let the musicians do their thing first, and it got built in a much more organic level than we'd done with other songs on the record, and that's still one of my favorites on that album for that reason. It breathes in a different way to the other songs to me.
Yes.
And that comes down to something that you do, which is, I don't understand how you do it, but you know how to cast the musicians. How do you know who to cast?
Well, I only like 5 people, so it's easy.
I've got to ask you one more question, because you are a bear, obviously. It's clear. You've worked with some of the great artists, some of the greatest artists and icons on the planet. How do you not completely freak out when you walk into sessions with them? Because I know that, like, I've had small encounters with celebrities or idols of mine, and like, my words fall out of my head. I don't know what I'm doing, where I am. I feel a sense of being outside of myself, and you just look cool as a cucumber, and you don't seem to react. Like, how do you hold it together?
Well, it's the job.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had met Miles Davis, I probably would have lost my mind. if I had met Marvin Gaye, I probably would have,
Yeah. Yeah.
There's certain people that I'm sure I would, just kind of be gobsmacked about. But for the most part, artists are just genuine. They're people, and they just want to be treated just like us.
Yeah.
They are us, so I treat them like us. So
they're people too. Well, Before we continue, I just wanted to let you know, if you want to find out more about Howard and his work, you can check out his website, howardwilling.com. There's just so much there. It's the eclectic selection of artists that he's worked with is pretty mind-blowing. Okay, now we're actually going to talk about the song Time on My Hands, but I want to get first to where that came from, and Things That Break Part 1 was the fourth project, I think, that we worked on together. Yeah. I even wrote this down. Here's my notes. Lost Inside a Moment, Melodium, Lay It All Down, and then this. So how involved would you say you were in the songwriting this time? Like, because you obviously gave me my prompts and whatever in regards to like where you were in terms of having me maybe look at a line or whatever during the Lost Inside the Moment. Would you say that that's different? Like, if memory serves, you seem to know what you want to hear from the song.
Well, this sounds like more like a question for you, because I would say I was more involved in terms of like what I wanted to hear lyrically and on that level than on any record before, to be honest with you.
Well, this one was a lot darker, obviously. That's it's clear in that. How do you determine if a song is done before it's recorded? Do you know, or is it that balance between what you think and what the artist thinks?
Well, it's usually the A&R person, what the A&R person thinks. But if it's just us as indie artists or whatever, it's a bit of both, because sometimes either way the artist may need to be pushed, or the producer may need to be pushed or pulled back into, we need to do a little bit more, we need to strip this back. It's getting too much, or it's not enough. It's so.
Does that conversation ever go horribly wrong?
Sometimes it does, depending on who you're working with. Most of the time these days it seems, it's let's put everything on, and let's not let things breathe. Whereas a lot of the music I shouldn't say we, a lot of the music I love is there's a lot less going on than you think. It's all about the implication.
Well, so knowing a song often belongs on an album, do you think about each song individually or part of the collective, or is it both?
It's a bit of both, but I view each song as its own little world. On almost everything that I kind of work on, or at least produce, I view as, it can live in its own little thing. It has to stay within a thread,
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose you could have a metal song next to a gentle singer-songwriter ballad, but it wouldn't work well in our Spotify playlists these days.
Unless you're Led Zeppelin and you just write all those parts into one song.
Well, exactly.
Which I do miss horribly.
Yeah.
But we tracked a full band, horns, gospel singers on this EP. But this song, Time on My Hands, being simple and raw, seemed to have arguably been the most impactful song. For me, I thought Broke was going to be the one that everybody loved, and and also with Graceland, I thought that would be the next call for that. Did you know that Time on My Hands would be a song that people would cling to, like when you heard it in its raw form and also as it's been recorded?
In its raw form, when we were first demoing it up, I didn't like the song too much, mainly because what we were doing, and I don't know if you remember, but we had like kind of shuffle drums and bass lines, and and then it evolved into other types of, well, what about if the drums did this, or what if it did that, what if it went more kind of broken down Tom Waitsy, blah blah blah, all of that, and then it was just kind of like, let's just do it as an acoustic, and then see where it sits. And that's kind of like obviously where it's worked best.
Yeah. No, it always surprises me, because you can really think a song's going to be like, everyone's going to love this one. And, for me, it was definitely this song and All My Winters as well. I was very surprised at how many people sort of lost their minds over that one. But something you taught me while we're making Lay It All Down was about the casting of musicians for this time around, how important was it knowing how much time we spent on the pre-production thing of getting the right person to play on this?
How important was it
Yeah, for this time.
for the right players?
Yeah.
I mean, it's always the most important thing.
Yeah.
You know, having an A-level player is there's no
Yeah.
there's
Substitute.
nothing better. There's no substitute. I mean, you can be a B plus player, but the difference is quite substantial between that player and I think on this song it was Ilya
Yeah.
playing
Yeah.
acoustic.
Yeah, he's a fantastic player. Yeah. Just I wondered because sometimes you can have a song that you like, oh, it could be this player or this player or this player, but for this one, being so broken down, it's like it's all
about touch.
Yeah.
It's all about how you
Yeah.
you let the instrument breathe.
So we recorded the vocals for this EP pretty quick, if memory serves, and songs like Graceland, I remember you pushing me pretty hard to, go for like 50 takes of that. But it needed to be that way. I need to get through, like, sometimes it's a few takes, but sometimes I just have to sing it out till I'm not thinking about it anymore, and then it comes out. But Time on My Hands, if I'm remembering correctly, was only a few takes to get through it. Do you know generally when you've got the take? And how do you know when to stop recording?
Yes, I know when I have the take, and I stop recording when there's no emotional connection left in the song. If it's overthought, then it's no good. You know, and I think to use Graceland as the counterpoint to this, Graceland, we did a lot of takes mainly because you're such a good singer that you will sing, you write your melody, and you don't really deviate. So the thing we were pushing for was the deviation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, the deviations were it was the first take of them that we used.
I just remember singing a lot.
No, you sang it a lot. Well, you sang it a lot, but because we weren't punching in.
Yeah.
We were doing full takes of things, and like this song was top to bottom full take. Graceland was top to bottom full take, except I think for the ending.
Yeah.
And then the ending was one full take.
Yeah.
But we just kept singing it to kind of get you out of a headspace of...
I get stuck there a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because you lived with it for a year.
And I had to learn it a new way and then stop thinking about it. Yeah. Interesting. Was there anything else that you think of in terms of when we were recording this song or this project that you'd like to add in terms of, I don't know, unique experiences or things you learned out of it or anything like that?
That I've learned?
Well,
I haven't learned a damn thing.
Well, sometimes there are like unknown factors, like when you, I don't know, sometimes when you put musicians in a room with the song, you may think you're going to get this and you end up with this, or it ends up being 10% better or 10% worse.
No,
I don't know.
I think for me, every record or every project's different. And the thing that I guess the takeaway I could take from this one is that we used the right people to make the record, and for the most part, other than the parts that we had sort of mapped out and were kind of integral to the making of the song, we let them kind of do what they wanted. Yeah. And people like Chris Donegan, he got to do kind of what he wanted. Fred, Jimmy Lee got to do what he wanted. You playing on it, you got to, everybody got to do what they wanted and have. It helps make it feel like it's a real project as opposed to one guy sitting in a room playing all the parts and and then pro tooling it for for a week.
No, I think some of my favorite moments of recording stuff have just been watching the musicians locked together, and there's a natural, it's a very small variation, but there's a natural ebb and flow that
Well, all those
just
songs,
makes it real.
it seems like we went through them fast, but they were no more than 3 takes, any of them. There wasn't one song that was more than 3 takes.
Great players.
Great players, but
Yeah.
they understand they understand music deeper than I want it to sound like X
Yeah.
artist. So you can say, which we did, this one's kind of got a Stax vibe about it.
Yeah.
And not just Stax, but a specific artist in Stax.
Yeah.
This one's kind of got a, what do we use for, the Travis kind of.
Oh, Lullaby.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely referencing Travis. It was Sing, but it was also another song of their side.
Yeah.
With
So-
the banjo addition to like modern music is such a fun thing to play with. I thought that was
But that's the thing. They could understand that we weren't trying to make something that was just kind of
paint by numbers.
paint by numbers.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments before we wrap up was my first time being in the room watching gospel musicians do their thing. And they obviously sang on Lullaby and on Graceland and another song that I haven't released yet. But like I wrote, just because you write the parts and you know how you want them to sound, and then you have these incredible singers come in and they speak, their own language with each other to get each other to switch parts or sing this, and that was a really overwhelming moment for me to see them
Yeah.
bring those songs, just give them a whole other life. It was incredible for me.
Yeah, they were amazing.
Yeah, just huge voices and just again, very, very lucky to be able to work with incredible musicians and singers to, again, you can plan everything, but when you get into the studio, things can change dramatically for the better or the worse, and I've definitely got the positive out of this situation thanks to this guy. But thank you so much for spending this time with me and telling me a bit of your story and sharing some tidbits of info. I'm going to have this up on all the websites everywhere, but thank you so much, Howard. I appreciate it so much.
You're welcome.
Yay! Thanks, guys.